going to continue our local focus for a moment more. We're going to, we want to make sure that we all understand the role of, in terms of services and programs that are provided by the three organizations, which together are what everyone knows as the Jenks Center. And that is the Council on Aging, the Winchester Senior Association, and the Winchester Senior Association Trust. We want to make sure that everyone understands what's being offered here, but also what we can do to improve what we do, right? So Rob Ain is the president of the Winchester Senior Association, and he's going to give us a quick overview of the many ways that the Jenks Center strives to serve Winchester's older residents and indeed the entire community. So Rob?
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to see everyone here. Yes. The mic? Okay. This better? Yes. Great. It's great to see everybody here. When I was asked to do this presentation, they asked me how long I should take, and they said probably about 2 hours, and they said you've got 10 minutes. So it's really, so we'll go through this, reasonably quickly, but I want everybody to have an understanding of how important aging well and what we do at the Jenks Center to support aging well in Winchester. We do flourish, and particularly after COVID, we've seen the number of participants coming to the Jenks Center as truly expanding. It's really actually been great. So we actually live under the guidance of three organizations, as Beth and Tom have talked about. And the three organizations are basically the Winchester Senior Association, which operates the Jenks Center. And our mission is to improve the life of seniors through educational, and recreational activities. We're a 501c3. We're supported by donations, grants, and charge minimal fees for many of our programs. We provide exercise classes, events, educational lectures, travel discussions, interest groups, and numerous programs and activities. The Council on Aging, which is part of the town, it's a government-supported organization, and they're to provide services, advocacy, and education to seniors. The staff includes a director, social worker, transportation coordinator, that's the person that actually schedules out the 2 vans that we have, a nurse, administrative assistant, and it really is really well staffed. It provides meals, transportation, direct health services, consultants on nutrition, financial issues. It manages tax relief programs, job programs, and emergency support funds. It receives their office and space from the WSA. And finally, the trust. The trust owns the building and lands, and their designation is to provide the WSA with the facilities to operate a senior center. The WSA is also a 501c3 supported by grants and donations, and the trust plans, constructs, and makes capital improvements to this building. I think everybody agree that they've done an absolutely wonderful job at maintaining and organizing the building. It really is a spectacular thing that they've done. But what makes the Jenks Center a home for aging well in Winchester? Well, I think we have to first of all talk about the WSA and COA staff, our drivers for the vans, the volunteers who every day are committed to making aging well a priority. I also have to mention the boards. We have 3 active boards, and I mean active boards. They are really an important part of what makes our success and making aging well happen. We, for most of the time, get along very, very well. We have a collaborative that has the leadership meet every month, but it is a group of people that is really, the board members are absolutely terrific, and they pretty much are all volunteers. So for another example, our commitment to safety for our patrons. This is really very, very important. Our vaccination and mask policies during COVID. We have had a number of people say that we were almost draconian in terms of our policies. But I will say that the safety of the patrons was our primary concern. Recently, my wife was walking down the block that we live on, and a neighbor approached her and said that she loves the Jenks Center because she feels it's a safe environment to go to. We believe that it's very, very important for everybody that comes here, because if they're not aging well if they're sick. So that's an important part of what we do in setting those policies. The Jenks Center is the only privately owned and operated senior center in Massachusetts. It focuses on serving the changing demographics of Winchester seniors. So why is this important? I'll give you a brief example recently that happened. We decided to open on Saturdays. Now, if all of us went to Beth and said, Beth, give us the money to open on Saturdays, I think Beth would not talk to us again. I mean, it's just, when you go through the town policy of budgets and policies and select board meetings, it would have taken a long time. Literally within a couple of weeks, we had a plan come out. We got a great deal of funding from Mount Vernon House to do it, and the activity on Saturdays is amazing. Now, what is important and why this is happening, along with a Cummings Foundation grant, is that what we found was that many seniors, 55 and older, are still working. So if the building's open from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, these seniors cannot use our facilities. So we made the decision, how do we offer aging well activities to these members of the community? By opening on Saturday, having Tuesday night programs, having programs once a month on Sundays, and this has been supported by the Cummings Grant and by Mount Vernon House. We are making aging well available to more people in the Winchester community. So how do we make all this work for our patrons, our seniors? The programs and services we offer make this all happen. Outdoor and indoor programs, especially exercise programs, Tai Chi, makes aging well happen. We found that seniors want to exercise. They want mobility. We give them that. We do yoga classes. We do so many different exercise programs. It makes aging well happen in Winchester. The outdoor terrace, I don't know if everybody's been to our outdoor terrace. It's really beautiful. We have meetings there. We have language classes, lunches, and other activities. It really is a very welcoming place to go to. And then we have a full selection of programs, from lectures to movies to entertainment to physical activities, including pickleball. I don't know if everybody's noticed these blue stripes on the floor. They're our pickleball court. So if you want to play pickleball later, you're welcome to. We'll get the net up and we'll give you the paddles. You can go to it. Ping pong, especially the Chinese community, is very, very supportive of that. Our annual holiday sale, hopefully everybody can get to it at over some attractive prices on a numerous amount of products. And concerts, especially concerts. We found that people love music and to be entertained. So that's an important part. And when people are happy, they're aging well. The Jenks is not only committed to aging well with our internal programs, it also reaches out to those seniors that are housebound with live and recorded broadcasts of our programs. This is being recorded right now. So someone who is housebound can look at this program later today, next week. WinCam is very, very supportive of this, and it really does a lot for us in terms of those seniors that are housebound, of getting them engaged in terms of what we're doing. So it's really, and the system itself was supported with grants, especially from ENCA, who is very, very supportive of us installing the system. The Jenks does not only offer great programs, it also offers important services, as aging well is more than just exercise and entertainment. Service of the Jenks include our transportation on our bus and van, helping seniors to get to doctor's appointments, shopping, and other assorted activities. This is supported with tremendous support from the town in terms of purchasing the vans. They really make it easy for seniors to get around town when they either don't have transportation available or can no longer drive. Aging well also means the ability to communicate. The Jenks has technical assistance to help with the use of our website, email, and personal computer assistance. We have a group of technical people that you can come to the Jenks, get more technical information, fix your iPhone, do all sorts of things. Technology for some seniors is difficult. So we try and make it as accessible as possible so those seniors can communicate with their loved ones or just for education via the technology that they may have. We also send out our monthly newsletter to 4,500 seniors and emails to over 2,000 patrons. Has everyone seen this? Probably most of them hopefully get it. We have found how this is very, very important. We conduct a lot of surveys with seniors. And we have the two, and I'm more forward than Tom is. Fill out the survey or you're not going to eat. This stuff is very, very important for us. And we find that about 67% of our seniors use this for getting programming information via our website. We'd love to be be the website. It would save us the cost of printing this every month. But that's not reality. This is so desperately needed. It's a terrific document. Philip spends hours preparing this every single month. And it really is, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, please do. It really is a terrific document for our seniors. Aging well also means outreach to other cultures, including the Winchester Chinese community with ESL classes, activities like ping pong. We also have actually translators here. We have a number of Chinese adults that come in that do not speak English. So you'll see some of our signage around ping pong is in Chinese. We have translators available to help these people communicate with us or us with them. And it really is, the Chinese community is a tremendous asset to Winchester, and we look at their aging well as being important to what we do. Aging well means financial help. The Jenks is a proud participant in the VITA is a volunteer income tax assistance program. We do over several hundred tax returns each year at no cost to the individual. And we help prepare them, send them in for them if they want. We can arrange for their getting their checks, if it's refunds, to their bank account or paying their taxes via their bank account. It really is a fabulous program. During COVID, it was very difficult to implement because it does require personal interviews with the people that you're doing their taxes for, but we managed to get it done. And you'll see it start again in January, and it goes through April. So anyone that needs tax assistance, we have the facility here to help you with that. Please make an appointment. It does get booked up. We also promote economic security via tax abatements, housing advocacy, job fairs, and the accessory dwelling unit proposal at town halls. Beth has talked about this. These are really important things that the town does and supports us and supports seniors. And seniors have to eat. We offer subsidized meals on Mondays along with our cafe. We found that on Saturday, people want to eat. So we have snacks available. We really do our best. It really is an important part of seniors feeling comfortable in terms of coming to the Jenks. So the Jenks Center offers all of this to make aging well in Winchester our primary goal. The WSA, COA, and WSA Trust are all committed to making the Jenks the place where seniors thrive and enjoy life. I will say that I'm very proud to be president of the Winchester Senior Association. It is a fine organization, and if you have the time to volunteer for either the Trust or the WSA or the Council on Aging, it's a great opportunity to make yourself feeling great in terms of aging well. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. So, just a comment before I introduce our next speaker. Rob mentioned this, but the Jenks is really unique. It's a privately owned facility, and that creates some challenges, but I've come to think of it as being mostly opportunity, and that the real power at the Jenks is the integration and collaboration between the three organizations, which are the Jenks, so that when you combine social services with education, with exercise, with a connection to the town, with a beautiful facility, you've really got something pretty powerful. And so I think we should all sort of understand that from the outside, all we really need is for people to understand that this is the Jenks Center. But within it, in fact, there's a great deal of collaboration and integration of different kinds of initiatives that are going on. The other thing Rob mentioned was the markings of the pickleball court. So when we're done, we're going to give rackets to everyone, and we're going to try to set a Guinness Book of World Record for senior center pickleball. So just I want you to get ready for that. So our next speaker is Dr. Matthew Rutledge. Dr. Rutledge is an associate professor in the Boston College Department of Economics, where he teaches courses in statistics, microeconomic theory, the public policy of aging, the gig economy, and the nature of work and work-life balance. He's also a research fellow at the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, where he conducts research on labor market outcomes for older workers, Social Security claiming behavior, disability insurance application, pension coverage, retirement saving, retirement expectations, employer demand for older workers, unemployment insurance, and health insurance coverage. He covers a lot. Dr. Rutledge has worked for the Economic Research Initiative on the Uninsured and for the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Before joining Boston College, Dr. Rutledge earned a doctorate in economics from the University of Michigan in the fields of health economics, labor economics, and public finance. We're very honored to have Dr. Rutledge with us today. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for welcoming me back to the Jenks Center. I was actually here for the Symposium in 2018, I think it was, and so very honored to have Philip and Tom invite me back and to see all your faces again. I don't know if any of you were in the audience at that time, but I really learned a lot from the conversations that I had around that presentation, in particular about the needs of people in Winchester and what they're looking for in terms of aging well. And the distinction that the town has gotten since from AERP in terms of an aging well community, I think seems like it's very well deserved and really brings up some interesting issues from the perspective of economic security. So just to give you a sense of where I'm going to be going here in this short talk, we'll talk a little bit about Winchester in particular with its growth and its challenges. The mixed blessing, I think, of home equity. I think one thing that I heard from a lot of you is this concern about the availability of housing and what to do with the home equity that you have. How to spend your money, which is a big challenge. I think that's something we'll spend a little time on next time, a little later, as well as health insurance and the complexity of Medicare, as well as the costs of vulnerability. Now, the charge that I got from Philip and Tom was to think about how that aging well distinction has really come up in terms of economic issues. And I define economics pretty broadly, and there's lots that I think fall under that heading. There's things like making sure that you have a financial plan that you can execute that is flexible but also secure, making sure that you can handle your finances well all throughout your life and to do so independently for as long as possible. to avoid material hardships, things like having trouble paying your bills or having to choose whether to fill your prescriptions rather than just take them. Things like protecting against health uncertainties, including determining what the best mix of health insurance coverage options might be for you. And again, the housing issue is going to be one we spend a fair amount of time on today, retaining the ability to choose the best option for housing for you and for your family. I ran some numbers from the Census Bureau just to kind of make this a little bit more Winchester specific rather than the sort of the bigger picture charge that I got the last time I was here. And so I was able to find some numbers for Winchester and its immediate vicinity, places like Belmont and Arlington and Woburn, and compare that to the rest of Massachusetts. And actually, Winchester is pretty representative of Massachusetts in terms of things like the proportion of the population that is age 65 or older. And that does seem like that's increasing both in Massachusetts and the Winchester area. But Winchester is actually skews a little bit older, a bit more people that are 65 plus than some of the rest of the state. I think the big concern is among those people who are 65 plus, how many are living alone? And we can see that's about a third. Actually, that seems like that might be growing recently too. And so if we're concerned about things like social isolation, that's a number that we would have to keep an eye on. And that does seem like it's a little bit higher than the rest of Massachusetts. Of course, a big issue that's happened, especially since we've been recovering from the pandemic, is the growth of housing prices. You can see pretty tremendous growth in the Winchester area just since 2010. And this is before some of the recent increases that we've seen in prices just since 2020 started, as people start to move out of the city and to move to a place like Winchester that offers all of these amenities that I think are much more conducive when you don't have to travel into the city every day. And that's true whether we look just in terms of the sheer price, the median housing sale, as well as what that means relative to people's income around here. So now we're looking at it takes about almost 5 years worth of income to be able to afford a house. And that's not even regarding the rest of the things that we have to spend our income on, like healthcare and food and utilities and all that. And that is a much higher ratio than you would see in most of Massachusetts. Now, that's important because home equity is really the major source of wealth for people as they approach retirement and even into retirement. If you take home equity out of the net worth calculation, you go from that big gray bar down to that red bar. And so really we're talking about most of people's assets are going to be tied up in their home, which I think is a bit of a mixed blessing. While it's good to have a valuable home, and I'm careful to say valuable rather than high-priced, because I think the price cannot necessarily always reflect the value that it has to us, especially if you've been in the home for a while and you have an emotional attachment to it, if you have memories that are associated with that home, you remember raising your children there, if you feel like you're safe and secure there. Obviously, that's not going to be fully captured in the price that the market wants other people to pay for your home. But even just with regard to the homeowner, it does seem like it's a good thing to have your home have that high market value. For example, it is a signal of several different things. It's a signal of the quality of your home, the size or the condition that is in. It's a sign of the desirability of living in a place like Winchester or whatever specific neighborhood you happen to be here in this town. It justifies the high expenses that we might have on paying our mortgage or paying our property taxes. It is also something that makes sure that we're not losing money on some very important investment. A lot of our money over the course of our saving career goes towards building up that home equity, and it's nice to know that that wasn't wasted. And then it's also a good source of money that's available for people as they start to think about their long-term care options, especially potentially moving into something that might be a bit more aging conducive. It's not, maybe not the house that you grew up in because of the stairs and because it might not be, it might take a little bit of time to, take care of the lawn or to take care of the driveway when it's snowing. It's also available for people if they want to pass that on to their inheritors. So it's available as a bequest if that's available to people. Now, other than long-term care and bequests, though, I think it's a bit frustrating to have a lot of your money tied up in home equity. How do you get that money? I think while it's nice to have a high net worth on paper, it often stays on paper in a way that's hard for people to access. So how do we get that money? How do we actually use the value of that home equity to support ourselves when we start to need that money after we leave the workforce? Well, one is to sell the home, and that's okay, that's a good option, but really only if you don't need another place to live. I think one of the challenges, that's going to be most of us, I think. One of the challenges that we see in a bubble market like the one we've seen over the last couple of years is that it's great to be a homeowner in that kind of market, but then you sell it and then you go have to buy in that same bubble market. So it's not necessarily something that's a net positive for you. It might be kind of a net neutral. So moving, I think, is a challenge with the selling. I think a lot of people, as they get towards older ages, but that's not necessarily even just in retirement, it might be just when your children are leaving the home, often talk about downsizing. That is, moving to something that is more appropriate for just you or you and your spouse. Something that you don't need quite as many bedrooms anymore, and that's just much more space to take care of. And so when potential retirees or even current retirees talk about that downsizing, I think they think it's easier than it is to do. I think, of course, there's that emotional separation of trying to leave this place that really has a lot of attachment to you. But it's also hard sometimes to find smaller homes that are actually going to save you some money. I think oftentimes when we're looking to move at those ages, we might be looking to move into something that's newer construction, which might actually be more expensive on a per square foot basis than what we're used to seeing. And of course, now we're back in the market rather than enjoying the gains that we had from buying our house, several decades ago. And so what we see, rather than people downsizing, we often see them moving to a smaller place, but a more expensive place. So that doesn't really save any money to be able to use for home equity. I think renting rooms, actually, as a result of the vote last night that Beth and I Ching were telling me about earlier, the availability of accessory dwelling units actually does provide a little bit more of an option here than the last time I came to talk to you. Renting rooms is something that might be restricted by local laws, but with this new ADU law that was passed last night, it does seem like it's people over 62, I think, and those with disabilities have that option, therefore, to get more in-law apartments and those sorts of things that might be conducive for them aging into a smaller space. So I think that's actually a very positive respect here, where you may be able to sell that house that's now too large to you and move to something that's smaller and actually will save you money, unlike sort of the traditional model where people often spend the same amount of money for a smaller space. And of course, economists love to talk about reverse mortgages, and I can already see you start to cringe a little bit because of the reputation of the reverse mortgage market. In theory, it's a great product. It's an opportunity to get some money out of your home without being forced to move out. But we know that there's been a lot of bad actors in that space, and that's not necessarily something that works well in the way that economists think that they should. The other one thing, and Beth mentioned this as part of her talk, that idea of property tax relief. Now, this isn't exactly extracting your home equity, but it is reducing the amount of costs of continuing to own your home here in Winchester. Property tax relief is something that's actually a pretty beneficial thing to people who own homes here in Massachusetts, and in particular in places like Middlesex County and Winchester and its surrounding communities. The average property tax in Middlesex County was $5,800, and this is a few years ago, about 2015. It's certainly grown since then. That would account for about 8.3% of the median household's income. And since retired households often have lower income than that median level, that might be something more like 10 to 15% of your income. And the other thing I think that's relevant here is that the property tax is much more salient when it's not the mortgage owner it's not the bank that you get the mortgage from that's paying the property tax. It's you writing your check. It makes it a lot more painful, a lot more, relevant to you that you actually have to write that check. You know that you're writing it in a way that the escrow account kind of hid before. So I think making sure that you can get that property tax relief that you're justified in getting, means that you have to go to the assessor's office. Beth mentioned they're a great resource there to see what you're eligible for. The eligibility becomes a lot easier once you're age 65 or if you have some sort of disability. And I think there's widows and veterans benefits. I think that's what Beth had said too. So keeping an eye on that availability of a way, not necessarily to tap that home equity, but just to make it so that home equity isn't so costly to you, I think can be really valuable. Now, I think it's important to make sure what kind of money is flowing to us, because it's kind of hard for us to move, I think, from the saving mode that we were in for 30 or 40 years while we're working to actually being able to use that money once you get towards retirement. And it's not just the emotional cost of actually moving into that spending mode. It's also the fact that it's just kind of hard to access your money sometimes. So that question about how you get your money in terms of what form are you getting that money, how often are you taking money out of the bank, what kind of withdrawal are you trying to get? Is it going to be something that's on a regular basis? Is it something that's only as needed? And then you have to worry about your discipline and making sure that that money lasts as long as you think you're going to need it to. Okay? Because we don't know how long we're going to spend retired. It could be just a couple years. It could be many decades. In fact, more often we underestimate how long our life will be in retirement than we do overestimate it. So the two main strategies that people adopt, in addition to sort of just taking out money when you need it, but in terms of more of a systematic approach, the two main strategies are things like the 4% rule. What financial advisors recommend is that what you do is you take out 4% of whatever pile of money you've been able to build up in your 401k or in other assets. Take up 4% that first year you're retired, and basically continue to take out that same amount, just adjusted for inflation. If we have a high inflationary year like we're suffering through right now, you might take out a little bit more than the year before. But generally about that same amount all throughout your retirement. And that idea, 4%, that should last about 25 years on average. And if your assets continue to grow over that period, it might last even a little bit longer. But what's nice about that rule is it makes it nice and simple. It's something you can set up as an automatic withdrawal, something that comes from your 401k into your checking account on a very automatic basis. It's also something that should hopefully last long enough, and it is accounting for the fact that costs are going to rise over time, just due to inflation, which was something we thought we might have been past, and now we're certainly knowing now that we're not. The other idea, and one again that I think economists push, but is kind of hard to do in practice, is this idea of longevity insurance. So Social Security and your defined benefit pensions are very likely annuitized already, just by default, right? The annuity is that regular check that you're going to get for the rest of your life, and because it is for the rest of your life, you don't have to worry about outliving your money in a way that a pile of 401k wealth might be hard to avoid, that fear of outliving it or not spending it at the right rate. And by the way, it's not just not spending too much, it's also potentially spending too little just because of the uncertainty about how long you might live. You've worked hard for that savings, and it'd be a real tragedy if you don't use the money for its desired purpose, which is to support yourself in a very fun and active retirement years, or to support whatever charity or your family members in any way that you would want to. So undersaving is a problem here too. Annuities aren't just longevity insurance, though. They're also a way to make things a lot more like the budget that you're used to doing over the course of your career. We're used to getting a paycheck on a regular basis while we're working, whether that's monthly or weekly or whatever. You can do the same sort of thing with an annuity check, that you're getting something on a regular basis. That's a lot easier for us to manage, I think, how to spend that money. So annuities are nice because, as I said, they turn a pile into a flow, and they do so in a very budgetable way. They're also guaranteed for life, so that you don't have to worry about outliving your money. But there's some disadvantages, that if you are going to take your pile of money and give it to an insurance company that will then split that money up over the rest of your career, well, there's some risk there that you might live a short time, and therefore the insurance company kind of gets one over on you. It also reduces your liquidity to some extent, so that if you have a big expense, like paying a down payment on an assisted living facility or that new apartment, that 55 plus community, or doing some sort of home renovation, or going on a big trip, that's less liquidity that you have available to you. You don't have that big pile of money in the same way that you used to. So I think what a lot of financial advisors recommend is don't annuitize the whole thing. Annuitize, say, 50 or 60%. That way you retain some of that liquidity, some of that big amount of money to be able to use. Also, I think economists have started to push, and I think the market's starting to develop, for something called an advanced life deferred annuity, or ALDA. That is an annuity that only starts to kick in once you reach a particular age, like age 80 or 85. The idea there is you have a pile of money, and you can take that pile of money and put some aside for your years after 80 or 85. And let's say 85. And let's say you're going to retire at 65. That means you have 20 years that you can very easily just take the rest of the money that's not annuitized and just divide that by 20. And that's your annual spending for the 65 to 85 period. So that way, you're insured against that long life. You don't have to worry about outliving your money once you get to those ages. But in the meantime, you actually kind of know what's going to happen over the previous 20 years. And economists have done some studies, including my colleagues Tony Webb and Guangdong. They looked at basically how much better off would people be with annuities and how much better off would they be with these specific kinds of annuities of advanced life directives. And they find pretty substantial improvement in people's well-being from any kind of annuity, but in particular this one that makes things nice and predictable after age 85. Now, the reason we partly care about this is because we know that we have high expenses as we get older, and one of those expenses is your medical spending. Okay? Medicare is a great insurance policy, is much better than the alternative, which is probably no insurance policy. But the problem with Medicare is the high out-of-pocket costs, as well as some lacking coverage in things like dental and vision and hearing, which we know are pretty important things to have coverage for as you get older. I did a study recently that I just recently updated with Melissa McInerney from Tufts and Sarah King from the University of Maryland. And we were looking at how much does your spending eat away at the Social Security check that you're getting, that source of annuitized income that is the most common for all of us in retirement. And we found that the average person has only about 66%, about 2/3 of their Social Security check left over after accounting for all the things that they spend there on medical care. That includes things like premiums for Medicare itself, for Medicare Part B, for supplemental plans. That also includes co-payments and co-insurance and deductibles and all the ways that we have to pay for the care that we get out of our own pocket. And for the median household, it's a little bit better off, but so we can see that there's a bit of a skew here. There's some households that have almost nothing left from their Social Security check. Those households that spend about the top 5% basically of spending almost have the entire check gone, whereas some other households are a little bit better off. Now, I think part of that out-of-pocket expense is the cost of having those insurances on top of insurances. That idea that if you have traditional Medicare, you kind of have to have some sort of extra insurance policy to reduce your out-of-pocket costs. Now, a lot of people have been signing up for Medicare Advantage, which wraps that all together into one thing. But Medicare Advantage often has extra premiums in addition to what you would pay for traditional Medicare Part A and Part B. Okay, so we have to keep in mind, we have to be very mindful that that is extra expenses that we have to account for in our budget, and that's not necessarily always going to work out. You have to kind of think about working with a Medicare advisor to figure out exactly what your best plan for you and your health needs, I think, is a crucial thing, because some plans are better off than others. In fact, if we compare Medicare Advantage to Medicare only, actually, I'm not sure the Medicare Advantage people actually end up being much better off in terms of how much of their check that they spend. Okay, we can see those two bars over there on the right are pretty similar. So Medicare Advantage versus those who'd have no supplemental plan at all. And retiree health benefits in particular, which is something my generation probably won't worry about, but some of you may have access to, those are also potentially carrying pretty high premiums or cost sharing. And so those eat up a fair amount of that Social Security check in a way that, say, something like Medicaid, if you have low income, might be a really good deal since they don't ask much from cost sharing. Other retirement pitfalls I want to mention before I run out of time here. I think financial planning here is really crucial. One thing that I think we know from the literature on how people make their financial plans, especially at older ages, is that it tends to be one out of the two spouses. And if that one spouse happens to die before the other, well, that might leave the other one in a position where they may not be very well prepared to handle balancing the checkbook, or to know where the investments all are, or to know what kinds of tax liability you might have. So I think playing an equal role in a household is very important, and to trying to keep each other very well informed of what's happening. Elder fraud, of course, is a major issue. I know probably a lot of you are getting calls all the time from numbers you don't recognize. To be aware of scams, to anything that sounds like it's too good to be true, almost certainly is. And getting help from trusted people, including opportunities for, say, having your children on your checking account or having a representative payee, if you get to the point where your cognitive health really starts to decline quite a bit. Social isolation is a major issue. I think it comes up with the transportation survey that Tom wanted me to plug, make sure that you take while you're here. So avoiding that social isolation by being able to get places, I think, is really crucial. It's not just crucial in terms of your emotional health, it's probably something that spills over into your physical health as well, since emotional and physical health, as we've increasingly come to understand, are very tightly linked. And then also talking about end-of-life planning. It's an awkward conversation. It's one that I think our culture just isn't very good at trying to raise. But there are places like La Crosse, Wisconsin, that was highlighted in a recent episode of Planet Money on NPR, that really have sort of trying to take away a bit of the stigma about the conversations about things like advanced life directives. So that is making sure that your family members know what you want when you're no longer able to make your own decisions. And really understanding what you want for after you're gone. So that's a conversation we would rather have before it's too late. So if all that seems like it's pretty daunting, and it very well could be, these retirement issues are very complex, it's important to know that there's good help out there. And that includes people at the Jenks. Tom and Rob both mentioned that there's lots of people here at the Jenks that are very helpful, and lots of people that the Jenks can really connect you with, including people probably that can help with things like taxes and maybe Medicare supplemental plans and that sort of thing. There's also, of course, financial advisors that I think are increasingly valuable with the complexity of our current system. Just make sure that those financial advisors hold themselves to a fiduciary standard, which just means that they have to look out for you first and foremost, not whatever incentives they have from the companies that they deal with. Community groups for sure, the Social Security Office, which is now finally reopened, and places like AARP and other online resources. I really have a lot of good information that's available to you. That's all I have. I'm Matt Rutledge, thank you very much, and looking forward to your questions.
So thank you, Matthew. So we are unbelievably nearly on schedule. So we do have a few minutes for questions. I hope you have some. If you do, some ideas, anything like that, anything that Dr. Rutledge said that didn't make much sense to you? Betty.
I have a question for you. I'm on South Border Road, and all the houses that were coming up for sale are bought by a construction person.
Sure.
They're leveling them and building
Mhm.
houses that are two million, 2,500,000. My house is the next house,
Oh no,
and it's pretty scary to see all that construction.
that's right.
What can we do to protect our facilities?
That's a good question. I think that's certainly something that comes up a lot in things like zoning, in zoning board of appeals. I think it's important for a town to be open to new construction, but not necessarily just sort of making everything that already existed bigger and possibly even housing fewer people that way. So I think it's worth sort of thinking about characters of neighborhoods and whether you're really kind of happy with the way that you want things to go. It is an opportunity for your house to increase in value, but maybe not in a way that necessarily makes you happier, right? And I think that's still important. So I think that's a zoning question, and hopefully local officials are going to be listening to you on that.
My neighbor just sold it for $1 million.
Oh, wow, it's a lot of pressure to then,
Oh,
yeah.
right next to it.
I'm sorry to hear that. And that really, it's kind of sad because I think you will then lose some of the people that you might be emotionally attached to, some friends and neighbors,
So our next speaker, we're going to take a break after your questions now, but our next speaker is going to talk about our master plan, zoning, sort of things that we could do or maybe aren't doing and should be doing to try to address these kinds of issues.
Thank
right? Yeah.
Matt,
Yes.
could you talk a little about Shine, so everybody's aware of it?
Sorry.
Shine,
Showing?
are you familiar with Shine?
I don't know. Yeah.
Shine is a program that, I guess it's only Massachusetts, I don't know, but it serves.
Yeah, you might want to come up. Yeah.
Shine's a program, volunteer program, and they serve seniors, basically, in terms of Medicare options. So if you can't decide which Medigap program or Medicare Advantage or Part D program, they literally have all the statistical information. They can drum up on their laptops if you are on a number of drugs, what the best drug program is. You can do some of this yourself on the Medicare site, but it is a little bit complex. They're a great service. We have a Shine representative come to the Jenks, so you can make an appointment to meet with them. You have, I think it's December 7th when you have to, so you're running out of time, but it really is a great asset if you're confused by Medicare and the different options that are available.
So, sorry, can you say that again? It's Shine?
Shine, S-H-I-N-E, Shine.
It is unreasonably complex, isn't it?
Oh, it's unbelievably complicated.
I just had a meeting with one, and the marvelous. She let every company, every insurance
Yeah, it's terrific program.
So can you say how to access that? Yeah,
We can actually
besides-
just call up the Jenks, and I don't know if we have Maria. Where's Maria?
We have 2 shine counselors that come at least twice a week, and you can call and make an appointment.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dr. Rutledge
Or Rob.
or Rob, our shine expert?
Yes.
Long-term care insurance.
Yeah, the elephant in the room. Yeah, the insurance market hasn't really worked very well over the last couple of decades. In fact, I was just talking about this in my class yesterday. Basically, the insurance market existed pretty well around the turn of this past century, of the millennium. And it turns out the insurance companies were using really bad numbers to anticipate how many people they would need to pay for. And really what the insurance market has been trying to do is pull completely out of private long-term care options, which means that for most of us that we would have to rely on something like Medicaid. Now Medicaid's complicated because it's designed to be for people who are low income and low asset, which I think would be hard for a lot of people in this community to qualify for. Until it's kind of too late, until you've spent all your money on long-term care, which is really where we see most people become eligible for Medicaid. So I think good estate planning, good asset planning is probably relevant here, because one of the things that Medicaid does is look back 5 years ago to see what your assets were at that point. So thinking ahead in terms of trusts to see whether you might be able to access Medicaid by, sort of making good decisions in terms of where your assets are, I think is really crucial well before you would actually need long-term care. Because the private market just hasn't existed in the way that we would really want it to. So, yeah, it was the elephant in the room. I'm glad you called me out on that one. Yeah, I thought one other question. Yep.
We've had the long-term care for quite a time.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that
I think they can't get rid of the ones. Oh yeah. So this woman was this person was asking about people who already have long-term coverage. You have to be careful because where a lot of the long-term care insurers make their money is from people who, for whatever reason, are late or stop their payments on their premiums. They make a lot of their money on those lapsed premiums. So I think it's really crucial, especially as we start to get older and our cognitive health might start to decrease, to make sure that the most important thing is you get those long-term care premiums paid. Because my understanding is they can't take it away from you as long as you continue to pay. Yeah. Yeah, making it as automatic as possible is probably the best thing you can possibly do. I think I saw another hand, yeah? Mm. Oh, sure. Again, can I defer that to I Ching, who's going to be talking in a few minutes?
In particular with autism, I would direct you to Kathy Boyle, who is an expert here. She heads up autism for housing or something like that. But autism, if it's defined as a disability from the Mass General Law, right now you would be able to build an ADU, say, based on that. So that person just lives in one of the units. So I'll talk about that later.
See, there's lots of good resources even for a guest speaker like myself to be able to defer to our local experts.
Okay, anybody else? So, yes, back there.
What trends are you seeing in terms of older folks wanting to work? Maybe not necessarily for economics, but for engagement and
Right.
stimulation. And are there risks that come in terms of other benefits that people should think about if they have that experience?
So the question was about working longer, which I think is a major area of my research and really of emphasis in local and government policy lately. We are seeing that people are starting to get the message that their financial health is much better off by working longer. The average retirement age is increased by about 2 years over the last decade or so. And that's in part because people feel like they have to work, but I think it's also because people feel like there's value in their job, that there's something about the identity that they get from continuing to work, a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, and because they like doing what they do. I think there's probably a lot of professionals that live here in Winchester and elsewhere that feel like they are doing something valuable, that not just with their own time, but out there in society. And even I think once you're no longer willing to or able to or just kind of want to take a little break from working full time, I think having an opportunity to work some part-time, to do some consulting, to even get into the gig economy a little bit, there's lots of opportunities to do sort of specific tasks or specific contracts to keep yourself active in that in that work life. I think the last part of that question was about sort of concerns, about risks, about that might be. I think for the most part, we think that more work is probably good for your health. It's good for your physical health even, as long as you're not doing roofing or something like that, or picking up heavy boxes. But for the most part, I think it's probably good for us because of that way that it maintains our identity and our social connections. But there may be some jobs that are too stressful that might actually sort of diminish our health a little bit. And then I think in particular you were asking about sort of eligibility for public programs, right? I think there's programs, for example, I'm mentioning Medicaid in response to this gentleman's question, that would certainly make it harder for you to qualify for Medicaid if you do suddenly need long-term care. But probably the working years are a bit separated from the years in which you might need that Medicaid to pay for the long-term care. So hopefully that would be okay. I believe that income is not looked back 5 years. It's only the assets that are looking back 5 years. So you can work as long as you can, as long as you want, I think without concerns about Medicaid. If you're low income enough, SSI, supplemental security income, might also be an issue, and that diminishes really fast with any paychecks that you get. But I think for the most part, for most of us, working is not going to be something that really gets in our way. Then there's one other thing, which is the Social Security benefits will be reduced if you're before the age of 66 or 67 if you work too much. But if that's the case, that's fine, because that money will be just a larger Social Security benefit later on. Something called the earnings test, but it's a little bit misunderstood. It's not it's not something that reduces your benefit permanently. It just raises it back when you're going to need it after your full retirement age. Okay, so I think that's the one concern. And then one more follow-up, if that's okay.
Just asking about Social Security and what your thoughts are, since this is kind of your field, about that continuing
Yeah.
for the next 20 years or whatever.
So this is a controversial opinion because the Social Security Trust Fund is supposed to be exhausted sometime in the early 2030s, maybe mid-2030s, depending on how the economy goes for the next few years, which is pretty soon. The law says that the benefits have to be cut by 20% at that point automatically, but there has been an increasing amount of study among legal scholars, including actually a law student who took my class and sent me a whole big article about it, on how it would be legal for Social Security to break its independence and actually to draw money from the rest of the government. So if I'm not a betting man, despite being associated with Boston College, and we have a bad reputation there, but if I were, I would probably place my money on no cuts and just a loss of independence for Social Security. We'll take the money from the rest of government. That means raising the national debt more, but it's probably better than making seniors and folks with disabilities suffer, just because of an accounting flaw. So I'm hopeful that that's going to be okay. All right.
So we do need to stop now. I really appreciate the questions. As I mentioned to you, there are all the things that we do now at the Jenks Center. There's all the things that the town does. But we're looking ahead to what we should be anticipating. And the kinds of concerns and questions that have come up, I think, suggest to us some of those things that we need to think a little bit more about. I happen to think that a little more focus here at the Jenks on job opportunities for people, part-time job opportunities, some for income, some just simply for engagement, is something that we should do. And perhaps more visibility. I think we're already doing a lot about the SHINE program, but maybe more visibility around some of these, more complicated kinds of questions that people may have, or they don't have the questions, but they probably should. So we have to try to sort of figure that out. But in any case, we're gonna pause now for 15 minutes. So at 25 of, we will then officially be 5 minutes behind schedule, but I know we can do it. Sorry. But in 15 minutes, no, this has been great. Yep. In 15 minutes, we'll then come back and we're gonna now get more local again in terms of talking about, I Ching is gonna talk to us about our master plan, the way in which it relates to some of the things we're doing, and the way in which it points us towards a future which we need to figure out how to realize, right? So we'll be doing that, and then we have one more speaker after that.